Hi everybody, I just wanted to quickly go over the spices that I like to keep in my kitchen to kind of prove that you don't have to go very expensive or keep a bunch of exotic things in your kitchen to make a great meal. Anyway, these are all the things that I generally use. You don't need anything particularly fancy or wonderful when you make something Mexican or Italian or just some good old American food, or even Chinese, something with some Chinese overtones and flavors. Anyway, here's my spices that I keep when I make Mexican food. Here I make chili powder. Cumin really makes the dish. That's one of my favorites. So when I'm making Mexican food or chili or anything, cumin is definitely and ground paprika. You gotta have paprika. And for Italian, you can either get an Italian seasoning mix. I prefer to use mixes or seasonings that are just the one seasoning, because the seasoning mixes often have added MSG or other flowing agents or things like that. So I like to always read ingredients for anything. If you have any food sensitivities or you're trying to be healthier, I recommend using single ingredient seasonings and keeping these particular ones, because then you can mix and match. If you don't like as much of one or another, you can always subtract a little bit here and there. So instead of using a seasoning mix, I like to use single seasonings. So these are my Italian flavors. I have thyme. These are also, Italian is one of the better ones for fish. Basil and oregano. Oregano really makes anything Italian. I don't use parsley because I'm allergic to it, but you can add parsley if you like. But you can, these are my three main Italian. Bay leaves, if you're making anything with soup, can really bring out the flavor, especially in anything with beef in it. And any soup type things, a bay leaf is a really lovely flavor to have on hand. And then my other favorites that I put in almost everything is onion powder. I love onion flakes too, but onion powder is a little bit more versatile. It really adds a huge punch of flavor. So if you don't have onion, then onion powder is fantastic. I also use a lot of garlic salt. Gotta have that garlic salt. Garlic salt does generally have parsley in it or a flowing agent, so be sure you read the ingredients on your garlic salt. I also keep a regular salt, no additives. I do not use a salt with iodine in it. And if you read the ingredients to the salt that has iodine, iodized table salt, you'll see that it actually has several extra ingredients, 4 or 5 ingredients, that some of which are toxic in nature and completely unnecessary. And so if you're using salt on a regular basis and you're noticing that your salt, when you salt your food, it isn't as salty as it used to be, you might try reading your ingredients on your salt, and you might find that it is in fact full of multiple additives and is no longer as salty as you thought it was, or as salty as it used to be prior. I also always use pepper, a lovely black pepper, just a regular black pepper. And then I have ground ginger. This is my Chinese. I love to put in some ground ginger. And then you can't have Chinese without sesame oil. Sesame oil really makes anything Chinese. And then there's also soy sauce. I stay away from soy for a variety of reasons. There are people who are allergic to soy. Soy messes with female hormones. Although soy sauce is not as processed as all your other soy, like soy in bread. It's a soy is in everything nowadays. But soy does negatively affect the thyroid. So if you're struggling with hormones or struggling with your thyroid, I recommend staying away from soy. I do not use soy. It does not add anything particular to me, so I stay away from soy. Another one of my favorite things to use for literally pretty much everything else, I also use Montreal seasoning. steak seasoning. If you don't feel like making a super elaborate meal and just throwing something together, this is a great seasoning for that. I also sometimes use the Louisiana seasoning in the little orange jar. I don't have one currently, but that is a great seasoning. It comes in a fairly large container like this. It's a little bit on the spicier side, but it's also wonderful in just about everything as well. So if you're looking for a little kick and you love spicy, that also is another multi-use spice that has a lot of different seasonings and nothing bad in it. Always make sure you read ingredients no matter what, because the ingredients are often very fluid and always changing, and these companies do not let you know that they change the ingredients. Things that you used to buy, that used to be great and wonderful, are no longer very good ingredients anymore. They've added something. I've had that happen multiple times. There's a lot of things that I used to really like, and then they've added something like high fructose corn syrup, or a sweetener that I don't necessarily approve of, that is not as clean as I'd like it to be, of drinks that I've enjoyed. The flavor changes slightly, and then you read the ingredients and you're like, oh no, this is not what I thought it was. Another thing that I often keep in my pantry for flavor is also agave. I love agave. I use honey. And if you use sugar, I recommend using either an organic unbleached grain sugar. You can always turn it into powdered sugar using a coffee grinder or a magic bullet or a food processor. You don't need to buy powdered sugar or fine grained sugar for many things. And then if you're looking to use brown sugar, if a recipe calls for brown sugar is just white sugar with molasses and another additive. So make sure you read those ingredients. And if a recipe calls for brown sugar, I strongly recommend just using regular sugar and cutting that as much as you can to try to cut the sugar if you're trying to be healthy and start balancing your lifestyle. And like I said, also I do tend to substitute this. I don't like the taste of maple syrup, so I don't use maple syrup. I don't keep maple syrup around. It's way too expensive for me to bother with, to only use like a tablespoon once in a while in a recipe, so it's just not worth it to me. Anyway, so those are my spices, and happy cooking.